Okay, let's quickly model this guy. I'm gonna have this image open on the second monitor for reference, but I'm also going to bring another reference using the attach canvas tool, just like we discussed before. I'm gonna have it here for general proportion and roughly, to have an idea where I'm going with this. One important thing is that resolution, and resolution here is basically the size, right? The in millimeters, or for those of you who don't know metric system, it's like you can switch it to inches, whatever. Resolution matters a little bit. You don't want to start modeling at this tiny scale and just zoom in extremely and start modeling. You want to have it roughly at how big it's actually is in real life, with the exception for like modeling or spaceship or whatever. You basically need some resolution, because if you go super low, the limitations of the software are not going to allow you to do fine details. So let's say somewhere about 50 to 100 millimeters should be fine for this scale. And you can see that this is what what it looks like. I'm only going to use this initially, so I'm not worried about offsetting it to a different plane, although I can. So let's stick with that for the general scale and proportions. And gonna sketch out the main box here, and then see how far it's actually extruding to the back. I think that's about right. Everything, in the photos, it's taken with perspective, so you have to get like critical on it. Plus, you're working in orthogonal views. You can always switch to perspective, and this will be more or less better, but I prefer to work with an orthographic. So all of that can be changed. So for now, we're not going to join it. It's going to be a separate one. Even further, we'll move this whole body away because we need a shell in there. So let's add. So this is in perspective, which means I'm just using my best judgment to add the shell here. It's going to be a new body. Going to stick out past the frame about this thick. And in case of modeling for games, I would say exaggerating a little bit is fine. So move this face as well. That's about right. And we also know that this is going to be cut away right there. So we shouldn't worry about what it looks like at the moment. This is roughly our top. We're not, as you can see, it's offering us to join. We definitely want it as a new body because of that cut we have. And again, to make it even better, we can move it slightly up. and leave that 0.1 millimeter space in there to make it easier for us later to select. So let's go by the same style. Like this is what it is right now. You don't have to work that way. I'm just showing it to you this way because it's easier to digest. I'm thinking. I'm not going to be worried about exactly repeating the cut lines. And I can finish my sketch here. It will still give me an option to slice this away. Or a lot of times I will just finish it, which yellow means we have a new face, and use that whole face to slice it off. In this case, it's not necessary. Mark the other side. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve here. You can move your sketch lines, make the adjustments. I think this is fine for now. We're gonna slice both of these at the same time. If they are affecting any other bodies that they're cutting, you can select which bodies we're cutting with it. So this is the body we're using. Make the cut. Add the fillets first. I'm going for a slightly wider reflex side. I think in the reference it's kind of more vertical, but I can always adjust that by just press pulling the faces. But I feel like this wider version has a more aggressive stance, so to speak. We're gonna go ahead and do the offset, and you can see that I cannot continue because we're only working on offset. Only works on flat faces. But I'm gonna commit, and I'm gonna continue drawing the sketch from here by simply dropping lines down. So I'm gonna make the cut. Which looks it's at an angle. So let's see if we can rotate this. We're actually are better off sketching it on the other side. So this is part of problem solving. So we're gonna do offset from the other side. I'm giving myself more space in terms of thickness here because I'm gonna be adding a chamfer or a fillet at the edge here. Let's just do drop down a box. Make that cut. Make sure we're only cutting the bodies that we need. There you go. We ended up with an extra face here. Just going to be removed. Fillet the edges. Just to make it look better. I'm leaning towards chamfering the edge here. just because it looks cooler. Using distance at an angle, you can also use equal distance. This would be the equal distance. Again, distance at an angle will allow you to control the angle at which it's cutting in. I kind of like this one. Like a more inviting opening. And we're gonna do a different one on the other side. If you don't remember exactly what it was before, you can just pay attention to how many millimeters was it, or you can also go ahead and measure the distance here, and it's telling me 1.2. The distance here is 1.2, so it's perfect. It rarely matters. Let's take care of this top piece. Like I mentioned, together with the bottom, these edges need to be rounded like that. And then on top of this, this is rounded as well. Then we're gonna, like we were discussing, we're gonna make the cut. Normally, you don't want to have tiny elements like this because they're just creating extra faces, but in my case I want this to have more detail basically, and this allows me to add a little more detail because I'm just gonna have this rounded. It's gonna catch some light when we're rendering it. One way we could have done the shell, we're gonna use it here. We're just actually gonna do the shelling like this. So our whole thing is hollow now there. Chamfer it out. And then it doesn't really matter what we're left there with. But of course, if we wanted to pretend that there's something in there, we can always add it in later. Just to pretend that there's some sort of object in there, something more. Something that projects. We actually can go ahead and merge these together. It's not very good that for production, it's not very good that we have all these extra faces inside. But for concepting, doesn't matter. So because I'm teaching everything from the point of view of concepting, I'm mentioning this to you, but this is not going to matter.